Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode where I am pleased to be sitting with Mary DeSimone and Tyler Ramey. And it's such an honor to have both of you here to discuss your upcoming session, Supporting Leadership, Building Capacity for Effective Multilingual Learner Instruction at the 2025 NIOPA Conference. For those that maybe are listening or viewing that are unfamiliar with your work, would you be willing to share just a little bit about each of your backgrounds and what led the two of you to focus on building leadership capacity, specifically focused on multilingual learner instruction?
So we both have very similar backgrounds, as you're going to see. We've both spent me over 20 years in public education as an ESL teacher, a coach, and then an administrator, and then got into this consulting world when I really wanted to make more impact at different schools, at different levels, and just get a lot of the knowledge out there. And the focus on this administrative piece is just feeling siloed as an administrator in knowing that we have to start building capacity with our peers. But it's a challenge to do that. And so we want to address how that can be done practically and effectively.
Yeah, and as Mary said, we have very similar backgrounds. I also have around 2 decades in the field of TESOL as an ESOL teacher, coach, district administrator. I also teach adjunct for a couple of universities in Massachusetts. And like Mary said, just the experience having been an administrator and working with so many other administrators, the importance on sharing the knowledge and helping to support and build capacity within schools and districts to be able to use that best practice that we know with multilingual learners.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here today and also for supporting the conference with your breakout session. As I mentioned, you are going to highlight some of those challenges of the siloing of multilingual learner leadership. What are some of the most common barriers that administrators face in collaborating to support high quality ML instruction? And then how do you see them beginning to overcome those challenges?
There's so many, right? But one thing to start with is other administrators being willing to be vulnerable. I feel like we all come into our roles, feeling like we should know all of these pieces.
Yeah.
And so you build a relationship with other administrators, your coworkers, where they're willing to come and ask and learn. And in the same place, we're willing to ask, okay, what is it like in your skill building, or what is it like here? To have that collaboration happen is first. And then really helping people understand what is good practice for language learners. I don't think that's fully understood by mainstream teachers or perhaps many administrators, right? What does it look like when you walk through a classroom? What does that look like? And I think it's taking some small steps is one of the biggest ways to make some improvements.
Yeah, and just to build off of that, I think one of the additional challenges is the time restraint. We know that administrators and teachers have a couple of things on their to-do list every day. So really being able to identify how to leverage the time that exists within a day, being able to help give some really actionable things that administrators can either turn to or look for or use when they're trying to support the rest of their staff.
One thing I caution against that we've done or seen happen too is that overwhelming sharing of information, right? There's so much, I think, in an urgency that we all feel as administrators that we want everybody to know all of these things. But how do we step back and really discern what should be shared when?
Yeah, I like that because I think we spend a lot of time thinking about scaffolding for students, meaning, breaking things into manageable bite-sized chunks. But for our educators, it's like, and our administrators, it's like the fire hose effect, right? It's like spray and pray and hope something gets through somewhere because we have so much we're trying to get done, right? And so I feel like, especially our administrators, I think that overflowing plate is something we're hearing everywhere. Just people are feeling very overwhelmed. So I love the idea of thinking about how we scaffold these needs for our school leaders the way we scaffold for our students. So and again, not without giving away too much of your presentation, but giving people a little sneak peek into it, you're going to emphasize identifying culturally and linguistically sustaining practices throughout the session, and you're going to talk specifically about some observable actions. Could you just share a small example of what these observable actions might look like in the classroom, and then how leaders can recognize and support them?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think one of the things that we always want to highlight and that we're going to talk about in this presentation is the intentional use of academic language and how that's tied into the interaction between students within the classroom. So everyone knows we need to teach the academic language, but what does it actually look like in practice? What are those things that we should be observing when we go into a classroom? What should we see or hear from those students and the teacher?
And there's some really great tools that have come out that can guide us as we're going through classroom, walkthroughs. What are we looking for? Can we make comments on it? Can we do some work with an L administrator and a principal walking through and have those conversations using tools that are already research-based?
Yeah, and I think just one thing that you said that sort of jumped out at me is this idea of sometimes when we're developing academic language, we assume that just giving students a space to practice oral language is going to sort of meet the mark. And what we know is just this turn and talk idea doesn't produce academic language. So without that sort of scaffolded expectation, like using the tools like the sentence frames, the sentence starters, just having that sort of structure for students, they're going to revert back to social language, right? So I think it's just important that we're constantly thinking about not just that we've provided time for this oral language development, but that we provide the structures to get to the academic language development piece.
And one thing we saw recently in a school district was the omission of the academic language on the teacher's part. Being so focused on getting through the content, right? Like they're doing a math, I did this and then I did that and I got the answer. And then the students parroted back, I did this and then I did that. And the answer is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, that was such an opportunity for language.
Yeah. And I think that's right. And I think when we talk about implementation fidelity, as teachers are learning to implement these new strategies and new approaches, it takes some practice. And one thing I love to do or ask teachers to do is just do a videotape of yourself, because if the teacher would have watched that videotape, it would have struck him or her the way it struck you, right? But we're so in the moment when we're teaching, it's hard to sort of reflect and think what we might have missed. And I think a lot of times we think we hit the mark and then we watch the video and go, oh my gosh, now I see, right? Like where I could have improved. So I love just doing a lot of video taping and having teachers just watch it back individually or with their peers. Yeah. So they can see some of the same things that we're seeing as we walk through the classrooms. And that just really helps, I think, with that sort of continuous improvement mindset.
Absolutely.
So one other key strategy that I'm pretty sure you're going to mention in your presentation is collaborative walkthroughs. So what are some practical tips for designing and implementing these types of walkthroughs to foster that shared responsibility among administrators and educators? Can you give us just some ideas of what we might be getting a glimpse into during your presentation?
Sure. I think one of the first things is identifying what tool you want to use when you're planning for the walkthrough, and something that's going to be utilized during and after the walkthrough, but that is not too cumbersome. Because a lot of these tools exist and they have maybe 25, 35 different intricate little parts, but identifying for a particular day or week, or maybe it's happening first semester, second semester, what the target is, what are we looking for specifically? So we have quite a few resources that we have experienced or looked through, and we're going to share what some of these are so that people can find them and make them their own for their own purpose within that school or the district to support the goals that they're already working on.
The other piece that's important is just the culture of the walkthroughs, right? So teachers feeling like they're being supported with the walkthroughs as opposed to, it's not an evaluation. We're gathering information. We want to see what's happening and what can we improve. So having that growth mindset and being very clear about the learning process of it.
And
Yeah.
one other piece to that, I think, is being very there's the word intentional again, but
Mhm.
being very intentional with which classrooms you're going to visit and why, right? Because sometimes we want to take a walk through the ones that we know are successful, so we can identify those successful practices.
Mhm.
And sometimes they're the ones that we know might need a little bit extra support. So I think
Yeah.
identifying how are we deciding which classrooms we're going to go into and when.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I love that you're going to be sharing some sort of hands-on resources that, folks in the session can take back with them and really implement into their own context. So I'm thinking about just like where we're heading in terms of the future and leaving our listeners and viewers with some advice for administrators who are just starting their journey in building capacity for effective ML instruction. Are there some specific steps or resources that you recommend to guide their efforts?
Where to start? First, I'm going to say,
Big question.
yeah, relationships.
Okay.
I feel like thinking back to my time as an administrator, I dove into what had to be done in the ML department. We had a department which was great. But building relationships with those around you, and that can take time in taking the time to nurture those and understanding what's happening in the lives and roles of the other administrators.
Really good point.
Yeah, I think also being okay with being vulnerable and knowing that you don't have the answer to everything, and knowing that it's okay to admit that and look for those people who do have the expertise to help support you. And that might have the experience of knowing which tools are going to help and which tools may not help. The toolkits that are put out by the Department of Education are always a good place to start.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information in there, but what's nice is how it's broken up into those chapters so that you can kind of identify what it is that you're looking for. But I think Mary hit it right on the head with the relationships. That's so super important. And again, also just being really open and okay with saying, you know what, this is not my area of expertise, but I will help to support you to find the answer, whether that's through professional development or another colleague. But I think that's a big piece.
Absolutely. And just to your point, that reciprocal support of one another, everyone on the leadership team brings some area of expertise, a depth of knowledge and experience. And if we can leverage each other's, we can build a synergy because to your point, no one person knows everything that they wish they knew or could know about how to meet the needs of every student in their building. So it does take a team, right? It takes a village. So I just want to say thank you so much to both of you for being here, Mary and Tyler, and for sharing your expertise and insights today. And I'm super excited to hear more about your session at the conference. I just want to remind everyone that's listening to stay tuned for more episodes featuring incredible leaders such as Mary and Tyler and innovators in multilingual learner education. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Chip.
Thanks so much for having us. Can't wait for the conference.
Thank you for tuning in to The Voice for MLs. We hope today's episode left you inspired and equipped to make a difference for multilingual learners in your community. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast with your network, and leave a review to help us reach even more advocates like yourself. Join us next time as we continue to celebrate and elevate the voices of multilingual learners and those who champion their success. Until then, keep raising your voice for MLs.